Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to our Tuesday evening Ask the Doc call. My name is Lynn Matthews, and it's always such a pleasure to be here sharing information with you about this revolutionary approach to health and vitality. Most of us over our lifetime, we have learned and been taught to deal with our health challenges by addressing the symptoms, right? Which is helpful, but it rarely addresses the root cause of whatever the problem is. And redox is changing all of that. In fact, it's changing the entire paradigm of wellness and vitality. If that's a new term for you, redox, you are in wonderful company. It was for all of us until a friend like your friend told us about it and we were able to get educated about it. But just know that redox is the energy that powers all life. Nothing happens in my body, your body, even your pet's bodies without a redox reaction. They're the language of the cells, if you will, an amazing communication network that not only helps protect your healthy cells, but it helps the body detect, repair, and replace any damage anywhere, which is quite remarkable if you think about it. Tonight, we're going to explore not only, what is redox to help you understand it a little bit more, but also why is it so profound, why it might be of interest to you, and just a little bit about why the company behind the breakthrough is so unique. People come to look at this for a number of different reasons, and you might find your reason here, and you might have a couple of these reasons. But many people are here because they have a health challenge, or perhaps someone they care about has a health challenge, and they're trying to find out if redox could be a part of that solution, maybe the missing link. I know it was in our family for my daughter. Some people are here because they like to be proactive with their health. I think we've all come to the point where we've realized it's a lot easier to maintain our health than it is to regain it once we've lost it. Um, it's an uphill battle that way, right? Some people are here because they're athletic and they've heard that there's some kind of benefit with recovery and endurance, mental focus. And although we have many, many professional athletes and even Olympic athletes taking it, you certainly don't have to be an athlete at that level to get those benefits. Maybe you like to play pickleball or basketball or just go on walks, bike, hike, any of those things. Maybe you just want energy at the end of your day to do the things you enjoy or to spend time with your kids or your grandkids. We're going to talk a little bit about that as well. And then another reason people look at this is the anti-aging benefits, right? We're all 24 hours older now than we were at this time yesterday. There's nothing we can do about that. But what if there was a way to turn back the clock, not only on what we see in the mirror, the visible outward signs of aging, but also what's happening inside, to our cells, to our organs. Dr. Hoffman often reminds us that the wrinkles that we see on the outside are simply a reflection of the wrinkles and the oxidative stress that are happening internally. So what if we could interrupt the breakdown of aging? And we're going to talk a bit about that. Another reason that people look at this, and we don't get to talk about this as much on Tuesday nights, but when you have a breakthrough of this magnitude that truly can impact every human being and pet on the planet, there's an opportunity. There's an opportunity to make an impact in the world bigger than the impact you've already made in your lifetime. And if that's something that resonates with you or touches your heart, get back to the person that invited you and they can tell you more what it is like to link arms with like-minded individuals who are making a living while making a difference. Whether it's just a little extra money you want on the side for vacations or to do something fun with, or whether you're looking for, a bigger type of income that you want, a second stream of income. It's really been one of the most rewarding things I've ever done. And like I said, we don't get to go into it as much tonight, but on Saturday mornings, if that's of interest to you, Dr. Silverman, who is a colleague of Dr. Hoffman's, he on the same Zoom, same password, will talk a little bit at 10:30 East Coast time about best usage of the product. But then at the top of the hour, we kind of switch gears and go into what is it like to be one of the people that are helping educate around the world on this amazing technology. So know that this is called Ask the Doc for a reason. We are here to answer your questions. So as Dr. Hoffman is going through her presentation, if you have any questions, just put them in the chat. But just a note, we're going to talk about this a little bit during the next hour or so, but this company chose not to be a drug. And so when you make that decision, there are certain guidelines and restrictions that you have to abide by legally. Because we are not a drug, we can't make any claims that we cure, heal, or prevent anything, and we cannot address specific disease names or condition names. So if you put a condition name in that chat, we cannot address it. It's not that we're trying to ignore your question, but we legally cannot address it. And we need to stay compliant because we want this technology to be around for lifetimes. So if you have questions, maybe talk about like the symptoms that you're experiencing and things like that. There's ways to word it where we can answer it. So just know that and put those questions in the chat box because that's why we're here. We want to make sure we do get that answered for you. But I would like to introduce Dr. Carolyn Hoffman. She is a dear friend and colleague. We've known each other. We've done this for so many years. We have to add more years onto this because it's been more than 5. I think it's close to like 7 or 8. But anyway, she is a board certified traditional naturopath. She's been working in that field for over 23 years out of Charlottesville, Virginia. She has worked in wellness centers. She's had her own private practice. She's back in private practice again, but she is also on the medical board for this company. That is a volunteer position. But what I love about that is not only does she have her decades of experience with her medical knowledge as a naturopath, but she also has been able to pull back the curtain and really understand this technology at a very deep level because she is on the medical board. And she is probably one of the most eloquent speakers on this in that she takes what could be a very difficult topic to understand scientifically and puts it in terms that all of us can understand. So Carolyn, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Lynn. Appreciate it. And yeah, everything that you say is just so amazing, and it really does set the scene for what we want to share this evening. And I thank you for taking the time. I truly hope that by the time we get to the end of this, that I've managed to at least help you understand why this is the foundation of health for every single one of us. And you mentioned pets as well, plants too. We are all driven and controlled by these things called redox signaling molecules. And so I'm going to get into sharing a screen with you, and anyone who liked that last story, that was a number 142, a very powerful story of the impact of these signals. We're going to go to the presentation so that you can look and learn and listen, and I hope in some way there'll be something that connects for you that makes sense. I want to talk about the redox signaling molecules, really very much an unseen foundation of our health and healing and our longevity. And for so many of us on the call, this is something that we probably never heard of before. I know that is something we all share in common, even doctors. Most of them still have no clue what redox signaling molecules are, and if they have been educated somewhat in it, they certainly don't know about the development and the breakthrough that we're going to talk about this evening. So it's challenging because if you take this information to your doctor, don't expect them to be able to really give you an educated answer on what it is. And I often say, if you want to know about electricity, you don't go ask a plumber. And it's really much the same in this field, unfortunately. But we're getting there. Life is changing, science is changing, interest is changing, and more people are beginning to know about this. So we know it's going to continue to progress. So I want to really just take a step back, so to speak, from products and kind of protocols that we're all maybe very familiar with as we look at supplements that are out on the market, and look at something far more foundational. And this is how the body literally orchestrates our own health and healing and our resilience at the cellular level. And that is the key to whether we're likely to be susceptible to things or not susceptible, whether our body can mount a better defense or whether we're constantly struggling to maintain health. So we're not going to talk about something that you might think of as, well, this is the next supplement fad, or, it's the latest trend in biohacking, even though it does fall in that field. This is just helping us to understand, the supporting and very important signals that literally make our life and our health happen. If you're wanting to understand what redox biology is and its impact at a cellular level across the human body, this is a great site to go to that will take you to other links on research. And we can look at it here as kind of an interesting one, right? Redox signaling at the crossroads of human health and disease. And that is beginning to give you maybe a little glimpse of literally how important this topic is. I want you to kind of think of the fact that so many of us go to our doctor and, they do lab tests, right? And they look at those lab tests, and how often do we hear people frustrated? Maybe you're one of those who says, I've got X, Y, and Z, but, my lab tests are all normal. So the doctor really doesn't know what to do with it because they're trained to relieve symptoms and chase those lab numbers. But the problem becomes like, if the lab numbers don't show that there's anything wrong, they're kind of stumped. Right? If they can't give you a drug or an antibiotic, or you don't need surgery, what do they do for you? And I know that I've been in that state where I've walked in and at one point and kind of thought, I am not bothering to do this anymore because they don't have a solution for me. And it's kind of a waste of time. But, I want you to really understand that when it comes to it, healing, which I think is what we're all aiming for if we've got challenges, isn't a destination. And I'll say that again, healing is not a destination. And I think very often when we have a problem, people think in terms of a destination. In other words, I have a symptom, I have something that bugs me, and if I don't have it anymore, that's my destination. I want you to understand that within living and life and health as a whole, it's an ongoing process, minute by minute, day by day, and year by year at the cellular level. And this is what allows us to meet the demands of our life. And Lynn mentioned some of those in terms of what you may or may not be able to achieve currently. And it also enables us to bounce back from health challenges. That's really where health sits. So real health isn't just about kind of feeling better today, right? It's about our capacity for ourselves to literally communicate and, as Lynn said, to repair, to adapt, and to regenerate healthy tissue over our lifetime, not just simply today, but over our lifetime. Because if it's doing that efficiently, that represents the people who live until they're 80, 90, 100, and they're healthy all the way through. And isn't that our goal, right? Not just simply masking a symptom. And this language, really, this communication language of the human body that helps us do that is generated within millions of mitochondria, and they're embedded in every single cell of the human body, and they're part of that energy production that enables us to breathe and live our lives and do the things that we want to do on a daily basis. These signals literally, as Lynn was mentioning, that they keep guard not only for searching out problems, but they keep guard and they protect the healthy lifespan, right? Healthy cells, they protect them and help them live whatever is their natural lifespan, depending upon where they're in the body. And these signals that do that are these things called redox signaling molecules. This is the language of human life. So what we look at here is it's because our body is made up of 70 to 100 trillion cells, that makes up every organ system in the human body. And we can I like this visual because, like health and disease as well is already going on underneath the surface until it becomes something that pops itself above the surface and we get a name for it. So cellular health or cellular dis-ease, if we separate that word out, right, is found within our cells. And we're really only aware of the shifts that are taking place below the surface when they create enough of a problem to cause a symptom. And so it's really about environment. If we think about the environment below the surface, if all those cells are healthy, then we're not going to have those problems above the surface. And this is the difference between, can we aim for cellular healthy environment, or do we have an environment that's full of inflammation and dysfunction at the cellular level so that we have problems? Now, every day, our body is literally replacing millions and millions of cells, whether they're in our skin or our gut or our liver. It doesn't matter where it is. So the quality of the health that we have is literally determined by how well these cells can adapt and repair. So the real question becomes, right, not what's missing from our diet. And I know there's a huge amount of focus on that, and I'm not saying diet isn't important. That fuels our mitochondria with the sugar that comes from the food that we eat to burn with the oxygen and produce the energy. But at the end of the day, it is what is disrupting the cell's ability to receive and send the right signals so that we do have health and it can detect where there are problems and solve them. Well, we know also that pollution and processed foods and poor sleep, dehydration, all of those things, just the stresses of modern life in themselves are going to scramble this network communication, which is somewhat like a Wi-Fi system for the human body. And that results really in this poor health or an inability to recover from problems. And that's something that we do see begins to become much more prevalent as we get older. We don't recover at the same speed as we do when we're younger, when our Wi-Fi system is much stronger. It's running on those 5 bars, maybe rather than on a spotty 2. And therein begins the real challenge. Now, on top of all of those stresses, we have to add to this the other insult that isn't a built-in process of being human. And that is aging. And it actually begins in puberty, right? Not in our 40s or 50s or 60s where we're thinking, oh, because we can see the changes on the outside that are really just as I said, and Lynn mentions, right, the reflection of what's been happening on the inside. But that reflection is because we are making less redox signaling molecules on a daily basis and a yearly basis. 10% per decade is a drop. And plus, what we have is nowhere near as efficient as when we're younger. And so as we begin to be unable to make enough redox signaling molecules, the result of that is that our body begins to really struggle to maintain cellular health and overall wellness. Now, until 2009, there was literally nothing we could physically do about that. We could impact mitochondrial function somewhat by our lifestyle, right? Our exercise and paying attention to things. But it was really pretty tough to say I can directly impact and rebuild those signals. We're going to talk about that change and where we're able to now step into a space where we can say, you know what, I want to do something about this loss. I want to interrupt that loss and that breakdown of aging, as Lynn mentioned at the beginning. And I want to be able to take control of what's going to happen, because the less I have, the more disease I'm going to achieve. And that is not my statement. That is a 2016 published study in the Journal of Free Radical Biology that says redox changes with age. And we've just shown it here. Plus, redox homeostasis, fancy word for balance, means that it is literally essential for us to live. And that's why I say I hope you realize how foundational this is by the time we finish. But the last part to that whole study shows that the longer we're out of balance, which is going to happen as we get older, the more disease we have. So in other words, the older we are, the more likely that's going to happen. And therefore, what can we do earlier than that to slow that process down? Well, one other thing is most people tend to think in terms of nutrients, right? We're all very inclined, I think, because of the last 60 odd years, 70 years in the nutritional field, we jump to things that come in capsules, right? We're very inclined to kind of understand that. I need vitamin C, I need magnesium, I need some zinc, or whatever it is. There's a million and one things out there, and we kind of go there. We think in terms of nutrients, we think in terms of hormones, we think in terms of peptides, all these things are kind of the latest thing. They're all stuff that you put inside you and your body has to digest, assimilate, and get to the cells. And let me tell you, as I had a conversation with a client this morning, just because it gets in your mouth does not mean it makes it to a cell. There's the challenge, right? So what we have to understand is that before a hormonal change or an immune response, there is a molecular signal governing that response. And that is why this is so much more foundational and takes priority over everything. And when this molecular signaling is strong, all those other things that we add into our life, like good food and supplements, etc., will work an awful lot better. So for decades, science has told us back in, the 80s and 90s and 70s and before, right? Everybody was like antioxidants, more and more, the more that you have, the better it is. But the science came out to prove that that is much more nuanced and absolutely not entirely true. And in fact, can be the opposite. we know that excessive physical supplementation with things that are antioxidants that come in capsules can naturally suppress the body's adaptive signaling ability. It actually impairs our healing over time. And one of those reasons is that because when we take these physical supplements, they overpower the body to the extent that we're giving whatever the quantity is, which is why more isn't better. And that the body doesn't have this thermostatic ability to switch off and say, thanks very much. You know, 2 capsules that you gave me was more than enough, and I don't need the rest and I can get rid of it. It actually still continues to impact the body. And then we know that too many physical antioxidants can actually cause oxidation, which means you're promoting inflammation and yet you're really trying to do the opposite. Now, redox signaling isn't about flooding the body and the system with these exogenous antioxidants. It's about intelligent targeting, the ability of the body to intelligently correct and direct what we need from what we're doing to support our health, which is a whole different way of working. Now, if you're not familiar with redox signaling, I just want to show you that the research has been out there for decades. We have research on redox therapies, and it's very robust and it's growing worldwide. 22, 26 years of annual conferences in Paris, France, and being studied everywhere now because it is the leading field of health science. They're all trying to make a drug out of it. Haven't managed it yet because redox signaling molecules are pretty tricky. They're signaling molecules. They're not something physical that you can kind of grasp and hold onto. They want to keep moving because they are energy looking for a place to go. And they donate their energy. I think that was what Alan said at the end of that story we had at the beginning. And what we can see from the research is measurable reductions in things like oxidative stress, inflammation, improved mitochondrial function, faster recovery, right? And even protecting neural tissues. And we all know that this piece has to be pretty strong because we really have challenges as we get older if we can't function well as a good solid brain. So redox isn't new. It has been studied for decades, and it is literally the critical force behind every single function of the human body, and that's why it's so important. Now, through groundbreaking science, Fergus Norton actually turned a decade of what was considered impossible research in this struggle to how do you stabilize something that is so volatile and moving all over the place. And everyone said, well, you can't do that. It's just not possible to control and monitor and harness energy in that way. And as a result of his intersection with 10 years of publicly traded research, he was able to help this transition and be able to bring a development of bioavailable, stabilized redox signaling molecules into play, into reality, and do what everybody said couldn't happen. And this is a completely safe, non-toxic breakthrough. And it literally reaches every cell of the human body because it's already there. We're already making it as we speak at this moment. Otherwise, we wouldn't be alive. But it literally reaches every single cell of the body. And it's at a level that I think I mentioned that, vitamins and minerals and traditional supplements simply can't achieve. The science is extremely well studied, and you can learn the full story on discoverredox.com why he was faced with a very challenging dilemma, moral dilemma over what he did with this research. And Lynn is going to kind of fill us into why that became the ethos that drives this company, which is incredibly significant. And we often say ourselves on this call, maybe just as important as the development of the product itself. So we have the world's first and only cell signaling supplement was brought to market in 2009. And this literally created this whole new category within the supplement industry worldwide. What we see is in the United States, because we didn't go the drug route, we ended up in the supplement field. So we have to conform to supplement rules within the United States. But in Europe, where this product is also available, they consider it a food. So it has a whole bunch of other requirements around it. But if you go to Taiwan, further east, they think it's a water because what it proves is we have something that no one knows what to do with. And we're kind of a little bit of a unicorn, and we still are a unicorn even 15 years out, because there still is no redox category. We're still the first and only, because you can't actually reverse engineer what's in here, because it's chemistry, not ingredients. And nobody can pour out what's in our nice blue bottle and go, I can make a version of that. So we are very unique. And that was part of also what played into why I was excited and willing to step into space where I wanted to be educating in a much broader environment on this product, because this is unique. It's not like anybody else's. There's nobody who's got another version of what we have. And so I wasn't having to explain, well, my supplement is better than yours and that kind of nonsense, right? This is entirely different and activates very differently as a result of it. You can see a lot of the standards of production that we meet in terms of GMP, halal, kosher. And as Lynn said, we have Olympic athletes, so we also meet all of the sport regulations and water compliance so that they can safely use this product in competitive sports. A lot of gold medalists are using this. Now, how do we as consumers know that what we've got is not the two ingredients that you're going to see on the back of the label, which is water and salt? Right? And Verdis himself said, I think we know everything possible about salt water. I don't imagine there's anything that this could possibly be that's worth my time, right? But it's not that, because it starts with salt water because that's where it's made in our body, in salt water. But it becomes these stabilized redox signaling molecules. And we have validation because every fourth batch goes out to independent redox laboratories overseas. They test the product and they validate and certify for us that what we're purchasing and what we're consuming are bioactive stabilized redox signaling molecules. You'll see this label is on the back of every bottle. So in other words, it's our guarantee that what we're purchasing is not salt water. So if you see anything that says that on the web, then know that you're wasting your time reading nonsense. And that they too have not done the studies to understand what it is. But here we have, so we literally created this whole new category. Here you're watching and looking at the facility in Utah. This is the only place that it's made, because we have 7 patents and over 7,000 trade secrets on our whole production function. You're seeing some of the stages in which the product goes through in terms of pH and temperature and salinity, and we're putting different frequencies to break apart the bonds of the sodium, the chloride, the hydrogen, and the oxygen, the 4 components of salt water. And the magic is in how we replicate what the mitochondria do to reconfigure that into these bioactive signaling molecules. And then the secret sauce is knowing how to measure it, unlock it off at its ultimate potential. So it sits there ready to donate its energy to us as humans and signal all over the body to do some amazing things and help our body do better what it's already designed to do, which is to heal. So for 15 years, Acera has actually been making products that contain exactly the same redox signaling molecules as your body is making at this moment, same as our pets and the same as our plants. And anyone who's super skeptical, go take the products and give it to your animals and watch what happens, right? There's no placebo with an animal. And we have a whole Facebook group if you want to see the outcome of benefits to pets. And we have vets who use it and horse racing communities who use it. It's non-toxic to all of us, and that's the beauty of it, that you can use it that way. Now, redox signaling molecules are really, as I said, they're like the master switch of the whole of our keyboard of health. So when we drink the foundational product, we are literally activating and impacting and supporting the redox potential of every single cell. We're elevating its power, which enables the body to be more efficient at doing the things that we want it to do. And so it's going to support cellular communication across the whole body to achieve balance and sustain health, because that's what the process of redox homeostasis is about. We have another product called Renew 28. This was a 5-year development and research of what do you do with the liquid when people for 5 years were spraying the liquid all over their body and reporting benefits. But it gets pretty messy, right, when you're spraying liquid everywhere. So I was like, well, how can we actually produce something that's not so messy? Well, that is the Renew 28. And this is the same as the liquid, except it has an inert silica clay, which enables us to actually put the gel on the body. Both of those products are the broad spectrum redox activation. Now, as Lynn mentioned, the anti-aging piece comes from this. We love it. And I'll show you a few of the clinical study photos of that. So this is probably incredibly popular, right, before morning and evening, anywhere on the skin, right? If you want to improve that skin and combat the wrinkles, that's the product to go for from many perspectives. But we've also done a lot of research that has taken us in a different direction, broadening our understanding of redox biology and what we have, because we're having to learn what we've created. There's nobody else out there that can teach us. So we have a double-blind placebo-controlled study was done by Torrey Labs. This was an 8-week study that I think is pretty phenomenal and important to show and demonstrate that whether you're here tonight because you have a physical challenge and you're hoping that maybe this might be a solution for you, or whether you're here because you're just proactive with your health, or you like to always keep ahead of the curve and you say, you know, my goal is to just live a nice long life and live it to my fullest all the way through, to not have issues as I get older, then this is for you too. And why is that? Well, this 8-week double-blind study took healthy 35-year-olds. They actually tested their level of genetic expression before the study began. And interestingly, right, genetics are changing along with all of that redox loss from puberty. So at 35, even though they couldn't feel it, their gene signaling was beginning to downregulate. They put the test group on 8 ounces of the liquid on a daily basis for 8 weeks. They put the placebo group on the same saline that we start our process with. And then there was the control group who don't make any changes to their lifestyle. At the end of the 8 weeks, they went back and they retested that genetic expression. And this is an outstanding statistic. 100% of them consuming the ASEA Redox had a 20 to 31% sustained and beneficial improvement in 5 gene signaling pathways. 100%. So if you're sitting there and thinking to yourself, well, I wonder what it could do for me. If you're part of the human race, here's an example of the benefit that you're going to get, right? And what we saw was improvement in immune system health, improvement in cardiovascular health with vein elasticity, improving gut health and digestive enzyme production. I'm a digestive health specialist. That fascinated me, and it was also proof to me of what I was beginning to see in the 4 to 5 months that I was using this product before this study came out. And I've seen that consistently all the way through. Modulating hormone balance with vitality and wellness. Being able to support the body's ability to respond to external stresses. In other words, how resilient is your body to, if you come in contact with a virus or a bacteria, can your body defend you and actually restore anything that you're getting attacked by? That's the essence of how healthy you're going to stay for the long haul. And then lastly, but absolutely not least, is a healthy inflammatory response due to physical activity. I want to take off the idea that when I saw that and I thought, well, you know, that doesn't mean that we have to be an athlete. And of course, if you are, it's going to directly impact all of that increase in inflammation that comes from being physically very active. But just being alive is exercise, right? We're moving all the time, so we're creating inflammation just being alive. In fact, just breathing in oxygen creates inflammation. So we want our body to be addressing that, and it's really important. What I also think about this study was that the placebo group had absolutely no impact on genetic expression whatsoever. And those two statistics are extremely rare in double-blind crossover placebo work. So I think this is a really important reason why this is foundational to all of us. Those genetic pathways are like a door. They open the pathway to multiple other signaling messenger pathways that help regulate switches. The inflammatory gene signaling pathway has 15 pathways in it, and you can see in blue what some of those pathways control. And so I think that that's important, right? Doesn't really matter what the problem is, but if you see something there and you say, well, you know what, I don't have good gut health, or I'm not always as happy as I want to be. Well, pathway number one is not as regulated as it should be. It's already probably down regulating. Maybe you want to keep your brain nice and strong and healthy. Maybe you've got some infertility challenges. Maybe, you're suffering from insulin challenges. Your pancreas is not working as well. Well, here's an example of if I can upregulate that by 20 to 30%, then I'm helping support my body combat the downregulation, and therefore I'm combating the long-term challenges that can come with this. But as you'll see, pathway number 4 is about how every cell has an inbuilt ability to combat inflammation through what we call the NRF2. I think of this as like the sprinkler system in the hotel, right? The fire alarm goes off and the sprinkler starts shooting water all over every room because it's going to put out the fire. Our bodies do the same thing. The NRF2 signals like the fire alarm, and it shoots out glutathione, which is our master antioxidant, and it tries to combat the inflammation that is there. That's the signaling messenger. This is why it's so important to have a healthy redox homeostasis, because every time we have inflammation, it is a signal for the body to actually counterbalance that and put out that inflammation. So if we're not managing that, then we know that this is already dysregulated. I mentioned it's helping every cell because it's broad spectrum. And here's an example of why we see so many different types of outcomes, right? Whether it's breathing issues, whether it's autoimmune challenges, whether it's long-term skin challenges, whether it's hair loss and hormone dysfunction, whether it's an injury and mobility or loss of energy with aging. All of these are people that I've worked with who've had those challenges that you can see on the screen and no longer have those challenges, because by flooding their body with additional redox, gradually their body's got back into balance. It's found its way to resolving it and allowing them to live their normal life again. And so it is because redox is in every cell that it doesn't matter what the problem is. All that does is say to us that every single one of these examples is about a damaged cell in a system that dysregulated life for them. And so I hope that that can give you a sense of why we also say, when people ask, can it help with this or can it help with that? The foundational question is the problem that you're thinking about, does that involve a damaged cell? Well, the answer is always yes. So I mentioned broad spectrum. This is our Renew 28. We have clinical studies of 28 days. What we do is actually accelerate skin cell turnover by 16% in 28 days. That is anti-aging. We're turning back the clock. When you're young, your skin cells turn over in 28 days, which is why children and young people in their 20s and 30s always look so much nicer than we do when we get older, because we've lost that elasticity. And you can see the changes here in elasticity and tone and fine lines and wrinkles, but also our skin slows down in turnover, sometimes as much as 90 days, which is why it looks duller. It doesn't look as bright. But you've got an opportunity here on a daily basis to add this to your lifestyle and watch the changes. I want to show Rosie's remarkable recovery process. And we're going to talk a little bit more about her, because here is why when we drink redox on a daily basis, we're literally on a journey backwards, right? We're rebalancing, we're replenishing what we've been losing. And so we're taking ourselves back to a higher level of redox potential. And I often say, this product in 25 years of being in this field is the single most influential one I've ever had the chance to use, right? There's no single supplement that could take anybody who is 84 and by changing that redox potential, make them look at least 10 years younger by the time they're in their 90s. That just doesn't happen. And if we look at the amount of energy in the eyes, we can see that the lights are going out, right? Which we often see as people age, especially, in their 80s and 90s. Who expects to look younger in their 90s than they did in their 80s? And this is an example of what ASEA can do, because it contains something that other products don't contain. Now, our targeted redox communication was that NRF2 inflammatory gene signaling pathway. We said, let's go from broad spectrum and let's think of this as like turning on the lights all over. And let's actually turn on the spotlight, and we'll take the power of that redox, concentrate it down, and actually activate just that inflammatory gene pathway. So like hitting one note on the piano or a chord on the piano, and let's see what we can do with this. So this was the outcome of 4 years of research. And what we're going to do here is quench discomfort and support natural process recovery. We all know that when we have a lot of heat and inflammation in the body, that's accompanied by discomfort, right? Whether it's something that's hot and red because it's swollen, it's not comfortable. It's not a function of normal living. But with our redox gold, which is infused with molecular gold, these redox signaling molecules are able to target that pathway, activate very rapid relief, but also activate long-term recovery underneath the surface of the relief. And so we have this beautiful way with our Redox Gold product that was released in February to really support and help sometimes freaky fast benefits to things that are uncomfortable. If you haven't tried this, I want you to get with the person that's invited you to the call and have your personal experience. What we did was to look at that NRF2 production within the cells, and we said, how much anti-inflammatory response does the cell naturally make? And this would be a study level, and then what impact does it have if we put redox gold on those cells? And what we had was 160% increase in that NRF2. So that's 160% stronger response from your body within those cells that have any kind of level of inflammation. And so that is a beautiful way to strengthen your body's ability to do something about it. We then went one step further and said, an NRF2 reaction causes more glutathione production in the cell. And we looked at a healthy cell and it went up by 70%. But I think this is amazing. We said, well, what would happen if we actually turned off the ability of a healthy cell to really produce much glutathione at all? In fact, only 2% of normal function. By applying one coat of gold, we actually had a 280% increase of glutathione. In other words, we basically brought that nearly dead cell back up to life again. It was at 98% of normal function. That is phenomenal. Think what that can do if you can target things that are needing additional antioxidant support within that cell and combating any of the heat and discomfort that you've got. You're able to take something and apply it and immediately impact the cells. We also did thermographic studies. When you do that, you can look at how much heat is coming off the body from where problems are, applying the gel. And then under clinical standards of study, we retract those thermographic studies, and you can see the difference in how it went from heat to cooling. And that was 100%. This is just 3 of them. We did multiple studies, and please ask the person who invited you to show you those. So we have these 2 amazing topical products that you can use for either targeting your skin and vitality and overall skin turnover and hydration, or for targeting things like tightness and tension, prepping yourself for exercise, helping your body recover, or targeting something that's causing you a level of discomfort, and all without a drug and without any challenges to the body, but only doing amazing beneficial things. So health is everything, and we have some beautiful packs that people often like to have as a regular basis. It does give you free shipping with it. There are lots of options beyond this, but talk to the person that invited you. We do have a free tuber gel that comes with this one, and discounts on these. And so it's a great way to get started to rebuild your redox potential. Rebuilding it like these athletes. Here's examples of the gold athletes. Golden Olympic medalists. when Olympic medalists are using a product, pay attention, right? Because there's a huge amount of vetting that has to go into this because their reputations and their careers are on the line. You can't have anything that A, can be untoward, could cause problems, or wouldn't improve performance. And why do they do it? Because clinical studies show that they have a 29% faster recovery and more endurance. Well, we could all do with that, right? As Lynn said, we don't have to be an Olympic athlete, don't even have to be a weekend warrior. What could you do with more endurance, faster recovery, sharper mental acuity? And we have a great set of information here at discoverredox.com. Some pretty amazing stories. So I mentioned we created the field. These are examples of the hundreds of thousands of dollars of money that we put into studies with third-party laboratories to, over time, teach us what we have here, help to direct and show us the power and potential of this product and where we can broaden the field of redox-based technologies for people to embrace in their life and really help them achieve better health and vitality. We say benchmark everything. Don't just benchmark the one thing that you're thinking of, because this is going to go everywhere and you want to track and see where's your body using it, because it's the one that's determining the speed at which you do it. So start today, do it at a week and 2 weeks and so on, and keep going. If at the end of the first week you haven't seen anything, then join the club. 85% of people are not going to see something in that because it's changing out your cells. Your cells have to do the work. But if you do see something, that's good. Keep going at the 4 ounces a day. If you don't, we suggest you double up. Think of filling the glass of what you're missing, because you probably have a larger amount of work that has to happen, and it helps the body move through that healing process quicker, and it gets exciting. At the end of the first month, 50% of people are excited, but at the end of 3 months, when you've done at least 75% swapping out of less effort, less energetic and healthy cells for much more vibrant cells, you're going to see that 90% of people are really excited by those changes. So replenishing the loss and amplifying the signals, there's 2 key things. The amount of time you continue to take this and the quantity you take is going to determine how fast you refill that glass, so to speak, to meet your personal deficiency. We're all very different. So work with the person that's invited you here, because it's not cookie cutter. What might be right for them might not be what you need, and vice versa. So you're going to play with this and find out just where's the sweet spot for you. We have other resources, which I think is always important to get a sense of what's this doing for other people. We have a private Facebook group where people just post their stories. We have more interviews here. And we're going to move over to Lynn and talk about what drives the mission of this company and what makes it so special. I'm going to just stop share here, Lynn, and we'll pop over and pin you instead of me and pick up on the other important decision that means we have something special.
Absolutely. Just as special as you mentioned, we believe, as the products themselves. Carolyn mentioned that Vertus Norton had come across this technology, and he took that 10 years of research where it was determined that it was impossible to stabilize them, and his team of scientists stabilized them. So just a little background on him. He was a visionary. He was the vice president of international strategy for Kraft Foods, spent most of his career there, did a lot of mentoring in the Fortune 50 space. And he was a big strategist. So he really understood very intuitively early on that he had something very special. And he was kind of at the end of his career. He was in his late 60s. He had retired. But when he came across this, he thought it would be a business play. He would stabilize the molecules, sell them to another company, and then go back into retirement. So when he stabilized them, he had a focus group of people, 40 people. These were friends, neighbors, church members who had varying levels of health challenges. 6 of those 40 were basically told to get their affairs in order. That's how dire their situation was. And these people had unlimited access to this liquid. While they were using the product, he was in conversations with a number of different pharmaceutical companies because he thought that was his best bet for getting this out to people. One of them in particular was very, very interested. They sent their top scientists to meet with him. They told him that they were very interested in what he had, and they offered him a very, very large amount of money, legacy money. And at the same time, he had checked back in with his 40 people a couple months later, and those 40 people had turned into 120 people. These people were sharing it with friends and family because they were getting such great benefits. They were even shipping it to other countries. And the 6 people who had been told to get their affairs in order seemed to be thriving. So as he's in these negotiations with the pharmaceutical company, they said, look, we want what you have. Here's the check, but there is a caveat to you taking this. Everybody who's using this has to come off it. You, your family, your test group. This is not going to, basically, it's not going to be publicly available. And honestly, I don't know what any of us would have done in that situation. This was, millions and millions of dollars on the table. But he said, ethically, morally, he said, there are 6 people who are still here now because of this technology, I think. And he said, I can't take this away from them. And so he walked away from the money. And that's when he created this company called ASEA. And he wanted this to be his legacy for mankind. He knew in his heart he had something life-changing that was impacting every single person. And so he made it his priority to elevate the industry that he would be distributing it through, because he was trying to figure out, how do you get this to market, right? It's Redux people have never heard of yet. I believe that's coming. It'll be a household name. And also, if you look on the bottle, like Dr. Hoffman showed you, it just says sodium chloride and water. So people are like, oh, I can mix up salt water in my kitchen. So he knew it required education. And so the field of network marketing was brought up to him. And he said, if we're going to use that as the model, then we need to elevate it. We want to make sure we're very transparent. He wanted to make sure that the ethos and the culture of this company would always put people and principles and purpose ahead of their own egos and ahead of the economics. And they're a privately held company, so they don't have all these shareholders that they are answering to. They're not driven by profit. And I think in a world that we live in where there is so much corporate greed, it's just so refreshing to know that there is a company out there with a life-changing product that actually cares about humanity, that really wants this in our hands to help us. I've been with the company almost 12 years, and I have watched that ethos play out not only in the corporate side, but also in the people that this company attracts. Many of you on the call today are associates with the company and working with it. And I think that all of us are here because we want to make the world a better place. And being with a company that puts people first, that values people as people and not objects. And I love part of his next level marketing idea in that, this is not a transactional business. It's not just about me getting you to buy ASEA, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you do that or not. What's important is that we're listening to what people have to say, creating a relationship. And if we have anything that can help them, we're there to serve them. At the end of the day, it's their decision. But it's just so rewarding to be working with a company that not only has a cutting edge technology, but also has a soul and a heart. And I think that the more you get involved with it, the more you work with the person who's brought you to this tonight, I think you'll get a sense of that. And it's always very nice that we get to share that, just a little peek inside, because this company is unique in the marketplace, not only the network marketing space, but I think in corporate America overall. So Carolyn, I saw one question about possible detox, and I know we're coming up toward the top of the hour, so I want to turn it back over to you.
Perfect. Thank you, Glenn. Let me just stop the recording.